Hello everybody and welcome to another On the Workbench session. This is going to be a little bit different. It's not as targeted as the normal basing session. That's why it's called Basing Potpurri, because I have to base a whole bunch of figures just across a broad spectrum of things, and we're going to have a number of these episodes this month. Now I think the first thing I want to tackle here, now I've done this in a blog post form, but both Reaper and Dark Sword figures, for lack of a better term, have these broccoli bases. It means, well, like here with this Draconis figure here, sawing him off, really not an option. Same thing here. This is another one of the, what was it, not Elrond, what's the name? Larry Elmore, sorry. Lord of the Rings is heavy on my mind right now. But this, not practical to chop it off the base because it's really sculpted in there. So what do you do with this? Do you just stick it on the base, throw some static grass around it? We'll do some stuff with that. Now, I have sawed him off a base before, but again, the cloak is attached there. That makes it really extra difficult. Same thing here. And now this is a Reaper figure. Instead of maybe just trying to chop him off of there or dealing with that, same thing here. Now I could have cut this one off. I could have cut this off. I'm going to see if we can deal with it because see how there's a little bit of a dip right there. Really would have lost part of the feet on this, and they also have these little guys. So what I want to do is bring up just a few. I mentioned those blog posts here. So this is a blog post that I did. This is what gave me the idea. See, you don't have to hate your broccoli. Now you'll recognize this. Remember this material right here? I'll just go back. Remember this stuff? Well, you see that right in here. And you can see like a big old broccoli base. You recognize, now that's oxide paste, obviously, the red stuff. And then we're just taking, remember all those little scraps of bark that we don't sometimes use? Well, guess what? Between the bark and those tree branches, that actually gets used. So you can see we're putting some tufts there. We're just trying to make it look like he belongs, as you can see, not on that broccoli base, but on the environment that we put him in. Now I also wanted to show you another one here. So this, I call it sort of a tri-level base. Now we have all these different little critters here. This is another Dark Sword figure. So you can see that we've got multiple levels here. We got some cats there. Looks like 1, 2, 3. I know you can't see my cursor floating over these guys here. And all I'm going to do is go to the last scene, and then you can see how that all played out as a whole. And this creates on essentially a 40 millimeter base, a little diorama. We got the flowers, we got the cats, that the color theme is there. Check that out. So I'm thinking maybe something like that with those owl bears. Now instead of on a tile floor like this, where obviously we would have to saw those off, we're going to stick with something more natural. The bark, the branch, that style of basing. There are some new materials that I want to try and use. Now this, I haven't used this yet. Now this is really nifty. It's again from Warlord Games. Look at all these different shapes and everything nice and flat. It's slate. It looks a lot like our bark. But there is one chief problem with this. Drilling a hole through this, not so easy, but maybe we can utilize this, maybe something like this around these guys. There are smaller pieces in here. Now we might utilize this stuff in a different type of basing here. And I don't know if I'll get to it on here, but I've got these, I think these are 4-inch, yeah, 4-inch circles right here. These will be for more diorama-oriented pieces, a bit like this over here. I don't know if I'll get a chance to do it. I think I'll do it in a standalone episode, but we've got this from Mithril Miniatures here, this Galadriel. What I want to do is have her on a base like this, but have some waterfalls cascading through it. So I want to try and utilize the extra space of, say, a plaque. May not tackle that on this video. Like I said, I think that's going to be a separate one. We're also going to utilize our earth texture here. We may be using some of these, the texture sheets from Green Stuff World. We've got our flaming skulls and regular skulls. We have the GW skulls here. We've got these, which I haven't tried yet, these books, and this is another Dark Sword figure that I thought maybe we try these books on that one. Again, it always kind of, it depends on how things play out. We have a couple of different types of materials here, obviously with the Green Stuff World texture rollers, and then we've got, this is just a regular kind of carvable white sculpey right here. Maybe we use, see this wood plank texture here. Maybe that's for this lady. So we're just going to set that aside straight away. We also have, and again, I don't think I'll be using too many of these here, but from Reaper, see these nifty little tombstones here. I cleaned these up. Again, I think it's going to be another more of a plaque oriented one here, where I want to make sort of like a little graveyard effect for a figure, but we have broken shields here, some fun stuff. We'll see what of this stuff we can use. We got tree bark, of course. We may also really use these basil leaves here, especially when we're looking to cover up some of these broccoli bases. I got sticks, twigs, the whole shoot match. We've got cork, a couple different kinds of cork. So I don't, instead of just me dragging on here with materials, I could go on all day with this. We're just going to start fooling around with some of these things. Again, the primary start is just going to be dealing with these broccoli bases. Then I think we'll do another segment here, because it probably, yeah, I'm going to do one additional segment on building like a diorama with this. Same thing with this one. So we're going to set those guys aside. Actually, I think these, I'm going to set these aside over here, because this one, actually, it's going to be the next painting Dark Sword, probably. I wanted to have actually some kind of fire over here that's not skulls, burning skulls. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to try and use the heavy gloss gel in combination with some twigs to see if I can't make a fire, just like the original artwork from Larry Elmore. Yes, I got the name right this time. So what I'm going to do is clear out a little bit of space here, and we will take, what do we got here, 5 broccoli bases to make, probably on sizes like this. So we're going to get our materials out here, get some glue, and we'll get right back to it. First thing we have to do, if we're going to get rid of these broccoli bases, we have to decide what kind of a base, especially size, that this is going to go on. Now there are some of these 30 mil bases. Now these are actually designed to have little inserts that go in them. You could, in theory, sort of chop away some of the broccoli base. Let's see if one of these will fit in there naturally. See it like this, I could maybe shave some of that side off to have it just sit down in there. That's not really what I'm looking to do here. So all of these bases, these are actually going to go away, because as far as I'm concerned, they're just too small. I like to have a bigger base on my stuff that's going to be like this, where it's hiding the broccoli. So that means 40 mil bases of different types and sizes here. So what I'm going to do is, got a little bit of a burr right here. Going to get rid of that. Got another couple of larger bases here, but we also have things like this, these MDF bases that we could potentially use. If I run out here, I know I need a 5th one. This might be a little bit big. Might be a little big. Yeah, even for him. We'll see what we can get. Oh, there's a 5th one. Now that's more of a 50 millimeter right there, but I think that could be really handy for one of these. We'll put our Draconid Warrior on that, I think. So we're going to set some of this stuff off to the side, get it out of the way. We have our bark here. We have some tree branches, and by branches I mean just these little pieces of twig like this. I'm going to keep those handy, of course. And do I have any more here? No. I also have these little pieces of rock, and got my different types of gravel. Good to go. First things first, we have to decide, are we just going to glue this here and build around it? Now this one, there's a part of me that is tempted to do some, and I've done this before at Reaper Figures. Unfortunately, I don't quite know what happened to the one that I wanted to use for this. Remember this stuff with all the nifty little runes and stuff? What if we were to use that around here? It's almost about the same thickness. It's close to the same thickness, not quite. Or we could use this, which is the exact same thickness. So we might just go with this. As much as I like the other one, I think we'll go with this. Now, I don't know how much good it is to try and use one of the roundel sections. I'm going to maybe go, well, around the roundel like this. And then you can see what's going to happen. We're going to try and position this here, and we're going to try and make it look like he is part of the floor. So let's get these out of the way. And now I could actually raise this thing up too. There's a lot of other ways to do it. This is, I guess it's the most basic way. And I did file this down so that there's maximum contact there. Like so. And look what we're gluing it. We're not gluing it dead center. We're gluing it a little bit towards the back. It's a little bit better composition naturally. We're looking straight down. You can see more space over here. Well, if I put it dead center, which is never a handy compositional thing anyways, then there's that much less of this that's going to show. Now I need to create a bit of an arc here. Now I've got a few carving tools handy for that. I've got X-Acto knives, a bunch of different things. So what we want to do is create a little bit of a, just want to make sure you can actually see that. It doesn't have to be too steep. And you can see it's just about enough to fit in there. We're going to cut a little more away. Doesn't matter, we're going to fill in the gap with some other stuff too. So like this. And then this is where I'm just going to score it a little bit and break that. And now, what have we here? See, not too bad. We could chop this down and have it all just fit inside this lip as well. I'm not quite so sure I want to do that, actually. Yeah, I'm not going to actually do that. So I'll leave this here, and now I have sort of an arc on the other side, just sort of naturally formed. Cut some of that away. Turn this around and something for the other side now. I'm going to snip some of this away. I'm just going to let the knife, the tool, and the cutting board do all the work. So that sits in there relatively nicely. Oh, look, another convenient little round piece that may just go right in there. Maybe a bit like that. I will get in here and, yeah, that needs to be a little less round. That works. And that right in there, I could just fill that in with oxide paste or some other fragment. But speaking, well, and again, I'm always just going to use the word oxide paste. I realize this says earth texture, but to me, it's almost like, oh, people call saran wrap different things. We call it saran wrap because of the brand here in the US, but I do know in some places it's called cling film. Some places it's called cling wrap. But maybe this is just that's an essay on American branding and the obsession with that. I don't know. But I'm just going to go with the default term of oxide paste. I know this is a little bit smaller here. Not exactly zooming in the camera. All this is just going to fill up a little bit of the empty space here. Fills in a little bit of that. Once this is all dry, becomes hard. A little bit of extra adhesion, but also here's a little more of this. Because if it's just glued there and you press on that and there's kind of a gap, it could, I don't know, it wouldn't necessarily break the sculpey, but you can see now there's contact points in more than one area there. So I'm just going to drop a few, and I mean a few, points of glue, because if that creeps out from underneath this, it really makes quite the mess. That we don't need. So in you go, right there. Now we've got our piece on the other side here. Where are we at? Get just a couple little dots of glue here. That's all it takes. And now for this piece, once again, just a dot of glue is all that it takes. You know, I have this. I'm just going to take this. Again, gonna just do this the safe way. And that's just about big enough to squeeze into there. But I don't mind. See how that's a little bit off kilter there? That I kind of don't mind. Kind of don't mind that. Got my brush right here. I've got my paste. What are we going to do? We're going to just fill in some of these gaps. Fill in a few of these little gaps right here. Now remember those books I was talking about? Those Green Stuff World books that I showed you? I think maybe we have an opportune time to use those. Reaper Miniatures also has metal candlesticks. There's treasure chests. There's a host of things. I think what I'll do is maybe a separate episode that features those a little bit more. But for right now, I think what we're going to do is we're going to emphasize dealing with the broccoli bases first. Baby steps. Because once we can, you know how I like to have things build off of each other. This can then build, we can build off of this in more ways than one. All right, so we got that. What do they call these? Well, it's book collection. There's two different types of books. There are books that have sort of demon faces in them and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe this one right here. Does it just, yeah, it just breaks right off of there. I thought so. You could file this down. I'm just going to take this to it here. Good enough. Now set this on the floor right here, right by where there's a little lamp there. This has to be one of the Reaper Con, oh, whatever the heck they were, the different factions, right? So look at that. How long did that take? That was a grand total of about 10 minutes. Not only do we cover up a broccoli base, but doesn't that tell more of a story than if we just glued that to a base? Let's say we glued it to one of these small bases here. Well, we're probably not doing all this extra stuff unless we're raising it up. It's a heavy figure. This thing weighs a lot for a small guy. Would you want that sort of top heavy figure? This has a low center of gravity, not really prone to be tipping over. Yeah, we could put a candle over here, so many things, but we'll just stick with this simple, relatively simple basic design. So we'll set him aside to dry. We are going to start on our next one here. We've got this really nifty, again, dark sword miniature, female archer. This one could have been cut off of here, but as you can see how one foot is raised up. You could do it. I've done it many, many times. But let's see what we can do. Perhaps with tree bark, one of these two things. I have to decide, am I going to use this or am I going to use the tree bark? Now it is possible that maybe I build it up like this and then build some stuff around it. I'm sort of naturally thinking the tree bark. Boy, I like this little ledge right here. What have we here? What have we here? What does this do? That's not too shabby. So we broke that off. But remember, we got to flatten this out. We have to flatten that out. So we'll take this on. This is where maybe we're going to employ some of those branches. Now, remember this. And now sometimes, like see here how the bark is a little bit tougher. See how it's a little more resistant. Now you're not going to really see this too well, but I also don't want to be missing some body parts here. And now you can always say, look at that. See how there's pretty much contact throughout the entire time. Again, you could sand this down if you wanted to. To me, this is faster, and in some ways it's a little less messy. Slightly less, maybe. Now, let's get our base here. And what I can see happening is that this has to go away here. I have to level that out. Because otherwise, and even still, I'm going to have to throw another piece on top of this. But first, there's a gap right here. Now, depending on how patient you are, you could fill this in with your paste like this, or you could take a business card. Do I have any business card material here? I'm just going to look around, see if I've got some. And it could just be any old thing that's a hefty business card shape. So I'm just going to use this right here. So that's kind of a hefty business card shape. There. I don't have my scissors handy, so I'm just going to have to tear this by hand. This is basically the sort of the thickness of the lip on this. So what am I doing? I'm filling in the gap here. Now I could do a second layer of this if I really, really, really wanted to. But that at least gives me a start. I am still, however, take some of this. I'm going to fill this in here. Because when this dries, all of this gap that's filled in now, all filled in, it's not going to rock. It's not going to want to break off. Because remember, this is not as heavy as the other figure, but still potential for things to break off. So there we go. Just a few dots of glue is all that takes. I am also going to use some Elmer's glue here. This is more for long-term hold. Super glue helps hold it in place for now. Alright. That is glued down. You can see some of that glue even now. It's trying to sneak out from under there. So I'm going to zoom in one more level here. Now this, you can see it's kind of pointed downwards. I don't really like that too much, which means I need to find some more bark here. So here's a nice big old piece. Look at that. And I'm just gonna grab a piece here. You can see I'm just taking my knife and cutting into that. And I'm looking for little sort of scraps almost like this. And the idea is that this goes sort of fills in this. It does a couple of things. So it kind of fills this in. And now the idea is to make this a little more of a stable platform, which is why we're, again, sort of carving this down here a little bit. Again, I could take a sanding stick like this. I could do this. So this is what I mean by sanding that down. Let's say that we don't even like that. Maybe I just sort of fill it in with some stuff like this. So I'm going to take, again, some of my material here. Not that piece. I'm just looking for almost like a paper thin piece or nothing at all. I'm just going to take some glue here. So I kind of didn't like any of those ideas. Here's what we're going to do. I got a whole bunch of different glues here. Look at this. I'm just going to plop that onto there. And now we have a few ways that we can build up around it. What do we have back here? I'm going to cut into that a little bit. I've got other little, again, little scraps and pieces here. I'm going to take this glue, move that around. It's a little game of fill in the gaps, like so. There. A couple of options here. I've got this little log right here. Sort of like that back here, maybe. Yep, I like that back here. Because I don't want to, this has so much, it has some decent texture on that so-called broccoli base, so I don't necessarily want to wipe that out completely. Also, keep in mind I can fill in with some foliage here and there, grass tufts, just like we did on those two Lord of the Rings Eagles bases. gonna take the opportunity to put some of this into here. Remember, we've got the basil leaves. Just going to pour some in here, and then we'll smash those up. Not completely. Basically, I'm trying to make a little bit of a layer cake out of these. All right. Yeah, I could put other smaller foliage on here, bigger logs, do all kinds of things, put skulls on here. But maybe we want to go more with, say, bushes and that sort of thing. So let's not go too crazy. We have dry leaves we could put on there. So we'll set that one aside too. Now, there's this one. This one's trickier. That one's a little trickier. I was hoping to do something a little bit like this. Now, that means hoping that I can get this to break the way I want it to. And it sort of did, kind of. So a little bit like that. That gives it sort of a... What do I want them over a ledge? If I want them to be over a ledge, let's try something here. Maybe it's this piece, actually, instead. And this will be interesting here. So it doesn't always work. I'll say that right now. The idea is to cut this at an angle. Like I said, it's tricky. You never know which way this is going to break. Never quite know what's going to happen when you start slicing into this stuff. I mean, it's the whole point of it. What makes it easy to sort of break it and sculpt it is also what makes it easy to, well, break it. I think you can see what the goal was there, to get him raised like that. I'm going to try and do a little bit more of that here. Now here, unfortunately, that just broke, but that's good. I'd rather have it happen now because I can glue those two pieces together. If it happens once he's on the base and it's painted, that's less handy, in a way that's just not handy at all. So again, we have another, it's sort of fractured a couple of times here, but that's all good. I'm going to get my first piece glued down real quick like here. Like you do. Notice I'm kind of going all the way to the edge here. Just want to make sure I got the right piece. Okay, here's the piece. And we're going to go with some of this. Touch of this. And again, make sure I have the right piece, which I think I do. There. Now this has to go on top of that. Hopefully I've got that pointed in the right direction. So I'm just going to, little of that. Little of that. Some glue here. And again, hopefully I've got this mostly in the right spot. I think I do. I mean, I could just go sort of like that, but There was something neat about, and which way did this go? I think it went this way. So now he really looks like he's kind of climbing up a ridge line here. What I'm going to do is shave some of this down. Try and level it out. So now I could drill a hole in his base and could put a pin in there too. I'm going to do this a little bit more shaving here. Like I said, I got this. If you feel the cutting is too dangerous, well, I think there's pretty much no way you can hurt yourself doing this. Unless you're really creative in finding ways to injure yourself, you should be okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this here, and then we're going to let this stuff dry. We may even have to come back to this in another segment because we're putting a lot of weight on this. We want to make sure we have enough strength there to hold this down. All right. Definitely going to wait on that. Now again, I could drill a hole in here just to make sure that stays on there, but I think we'll be good. So this guy, I'm going to just find a little safe place for him here, or I'm not going to knock him over. Now we've got the angel figure here. Do I want to go with a more natural type of a base like this? It would be nice to have some sort of sculpey style base, but there's all this, well, basically greenery right there. So what I'm going to do is try and actually cut away some of this to make it a little bit more of a platform for the figure. We are going to make sure that that's more level. So that is just kind of bouncing around there. And when I do this, basing is an all-day affair. And by all day, I mean 10 some odd hours of it. It's that crazy. Now, of course, if we want to do it the quick way, we could just do that. Okay, you know what? We haven't shown you that. We're going to show you that way here. So first, I'm just going to make sure this is all as flat as can be. Now, when you have these sanding sticks and you've got some of the higher grit ones, they'll actually, you can see that's doing something right here on the, even on the pewter. So we're just gonna, we'll keep this simple here. And we've done a couple of complex ones. We're gonna do something that's a little more simple. Glue. And make sure that, because there's a big, see that big old gap that's in it? That's what I was trying to fill with a lot of the oxide paste there. All right, that is in place. We could do this the simple way. We could just quite literally build up oxide paste around it. Oxide paste, and again, I'm just using the generic term. This is the earth texture, sandy pit, whatever we've got. We could do that. And we're just going to keep it simple here. Just going to get some of this extra stuff off of here. And I'm just going to use maybe some of my leaves. Not going to put any skulls or broken weapons or anything like that. Unless, maybe you put a shield and a sword, and this is an angel that's maybe there's some kind of fallen warrior thing going on, but you probably want to have the fallen warrior there in some sort of a diorama, I would think. All right. That's good enough. We could take some of our pieces of cork and perhaps make some rocks out of those, like this. And just stick those in there. It's another little bit of a rock. See if we can't make just one more. What fit back here? It probably won't fit back there. Might just take this one. No, that's just going to be too big. Yeah, these are the changes sometimes and little modifications you need to make. What I'm going to do is just a little bit of gravel here. Now, actually, what Reaper miniatures used to make way back in the day were now these were square bases, but they actually had, they were hollow. So remember those first bases that I showed you in the intro there that have the, no, I set those aside, almost like a little bit of a cutout. Well, those things were actually cut out, and the idea was you would set the broccoli base down in there and fill it in just like what I did here, but it was more like a trench, whereas this has some height to it. So, all right, boom. Now that's about as simple as it gets right there. About as simple as it gets. Now, I'm just going to try one last base here. I'm going to see, do I have... I have this. Wonder what happens when we just do something like this. Again, quick little application here. Let's get this figure glued down. Just trying to show you as many different ways of dealing with the broccoli bases as possible. So again, another green stuff world texture roller texture. It's sort of a cobblestone-esque texture there. We already have kind of a oval here, so let's take a little bit of an advantage of that. All right, now I'm just gonna break off that point there. I'm gonna fill this in best as we can. Like that. I'm going to use, again, a little bit of the Elmer's, well, the wood glue for longer term hold. Super glue, so that just maybe grabs a little bit faster. And on goes our piece with our cobblestones there. There's no big secret what's going to happen here. You've already seen it. The idea is same as before. We try and get an oval that reasonably matches. I could put the figure over the top of this, just a whole sheet here, and kind of draw lines around it or whatever. I usually have so many tiny little fragments that I'm trying to use, it's just not really worth it to do that. So if you're wondering why, that's one of the reasons why. So again, just gonna use my paste, do some fill. shot of glue. Glue this in. And then we will fill in some of our other gaps where possible. Oh, what does this look like? How's about that? It goes right there. And sorry, my hand's in the way. Didn't realize that it was. I'm gonna just clean off this brush a little bit. And then I'm just going to do a little quick gap filling here. But you notice how I sort of spread it out? It's spread out instead of just sort of congregated around the figure alone. And let's have some leaf fall on our road like this, or cobblestones, because that happens. It happens on our street. Street's been covered with leaves for the last 2 months. And voila, there you go. We still have some of the texture from that showing. Now let's go back here to our original base. Now I'm not going to stick the figure on there just yet because I want to do some stuff under here. Now what if I want this to be more of a water effect type of thing? Now I think at that point maybe I'll just throw in a few little rocks there. Maybe some leaves. But I'm not really going to go crazy on the bottom part here. I could put some twigs in here also. We could have some logs or whatever. Maybe we'll try that. But for sure, so maybe wanted to try some of this too. So that's still moving around there. So I think we're just going to have to really let this set before we put the guy on there. And we'll just kind of do a little quick review of this maybe once all of this has a better chance to dry, because that's still, like I said, it's still moving around, and that's something we don't want. There we go. Just going to use that to press that down, and then we will use some of our leaf cover here to hide some of that gap over there. And this is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to throw in some of my leaves here. And it's kind of a nifty base already just by itself, but I want to make sure that I can get the Draconis figure on that. So again, we will just save that. My vision is for this log to go over here, and for him to be like that. And we got something along the lines of this or this, something like that. But we just have to let that stand. And the next thing we're going to get to is some Lord of the Rings figures and trying to just match their bases. And it's a couple of different, some of it's bark and branch, some of it's cork, some of it's some sculpey, and we'll get to that next. So stay tuned. I got some Lord of the Rings figures here that need to get based. These are in addition to the Rohan army that I had started. So here, let's check this out. We've got, again, a little bit of a cavalry figure. Now we got different situations. This one on the left, this is Theoden. He's plastic, a new plastic figure. This one is the old metal Erkenbrand. So we have to deal with different materials again. Metal Erkenbrand, metal Aragorn. We have two different versions. So this is the old metal Theoden over here. This is the new plastic Theoden over here. Then I also have to make cavalry bases. And here, let's take a look at some of the... So here's part of the, again, the Rohan army here. But a lot of the basing is on the bark and branch. Let's go with that then. Now, some of the Rohan figures, and those of you that got to see the army painting series on these, you saw how these were all based. This was just cork, and that's the heavy bulletin board cork, and we're going to go with that on a couple of these. Let's get the party started here with Aragorn, like so. I'm going to see if I can't get that zoomed up a little bit for you. We are going to, I'm just going to go straight to some glue here. Now remember what we did on the Harad bases where we covered that slot with just a little piece of masking tape. You need to do that, fine, but here, look, the cork essentially covers that. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit there, but now here I'm going to have to use a pin because he's metal. The plastic ones, I might be able to get away with it ish. I would not say for sure. Now I'm just gonna, this is my usual paper clip here for a base. For my pin, there's a smaller piece, some glue. Now sometimes with the bulletin board cork, a couple of things can happen. It can go right down through it real nice and easy, and there's other times where it just kind of bounces. If it does that, that means you've got to drill a hole. But you really don't know till you try and stick that in there. And I'm going to try and do that right now. So that cooperated, went all the way down, and look what we've got here. So definitely keeps that stone theme, that rock base that's built into the figure here. I'm going to set that aside and let it dry, and then we'll go back, do our other effects. But let's do the, what the heck, let's do that with this Theoden. I'm just going to glue this real quick to get that out of the way. So bear with me here. And these are just scraps. These are literally scraps from other things. Got the same thing. He's standing on a rock. He's going to go there. We're going to get ourselves a little bit of a pin going here. Just going to cut this paper clip sort of in half. And fortunately it didn't fly off into space somewhere. And here we go. Pin to the miniature, miniature to the base. I'm just going to let that, I'm going to hold it here for a few seconds. And there we go. You can just pretty much leave it like that and do the rest with flock and whatever. But we'll go back to those. Now let's say you wanted to do something more than just the... This is a really nice piece here where it's kind of up on an angle, but I'm going to see if... Nope, that's a little bit too much of an angle. I'm going to see what I've got here. Bark, in the terms of bark. That might work for either Erkenbrand and or... So that's not too bad. But he still goes on that small base right there. So I don't want him to be too high necessarily. It seems to be reasonably level. I'm gonna break off some of that. And if I had some extra orc shields or something like, oh, I do have, yeah, I do have orc heads. That could be fun. Not orchids, orc heads. Which way do I want him to be going here? It's almost like he's sort of stepping uphill a little bit. So I'm going to avail myself of a sanding stick here. Go in a few different directions. I also have to get the dust off of there because that dust is pretty much an anti-glue mechanism right there. Stick this down onto our base. Pin. Now here I could only do one pin on his foot because the other foot is actually sort of raised, like he's on his tippy toes. That is, when you cut these things off the sprue, especially the older figures, sometimes that is all you have in terms of what it's going to hang on to. Okay. And hopefully when we press this down through here, we have some good contact. Yeah, good contact. And I could just leave it like this and just put flowers and such on there. We're gonna, again, it's gotta take hold here. So just let him sit there. We got other figures we can do. That's why we have other figures. Let's try a Theoden Cavalry. Or is it going to be Urkenbrand? I definitely want to match him to his base. Now, we only have these two legs here. I do have pins or holes for pins in both legs. You know, it's going to have to go this way. So that's why I saved this piece, because it was pretty much the size that I wanted it to be. Now, what I want to do is get this cleaned off right here and make sure it's as level as it can be. Sorry, I just smashed the camera. Here, let's grab our... Now you can see there's a lot of... Look at how brown that sanding stick is. So a lot of the sawdust or whatever is definitely getting stuck into the sanding stick. So it's got a kind of a finite life to it. Some glue again. Oh heck, I'm going to throw in... My hope is that this actually squeezes out the sides, and then I can just throw some leaves there. It's kind of a... Oh, I don't want to call it a cheating way, but... See, like it did there. It didn't quite do that on the other side. But yeah, the idea was that it would sort of leak out on this side, and then I could maybe throw some rocks or sand or this into it. I could use my oxide paste, but I am just gonna shoot some glue down in here. It does a couple things. It gives me a little extra strength, and it does give me some decent hold with my leaves that I'm just gonna shove down into here. And that's more than good enough. Horse is going to go the other way, so let's get some pins into his feet. Now here, because he's a metal horse, this is where it gets a little challenging, and this is where I might have to just kind of wait. I'm going to put the pins into here, let this glue dry. Well, as much as I can let it dry, and let the base itself dry also. Sometimes the pins, especially in the metal figures, they don't always fit exactly where you want them to. Man, sometimes they just do that and be completely irritating. Now you know why I wanted these to dry a little bit. Now this one's going to stay a little better because I drilled that hole just that much deeper. This other foot here, it's not so much to hold the figure to the base, it's to keep it from spinning. Plastic figure, I wouldn't necessarily have to worry about that, but a metal figure I do. Now the reason why the pin is sticking to my fingers is because there's little burrs on the end of this, and it's actually just kind of hooking onto my skin. So we are just gonna set him upside down with the pins like that. Oh, somewhere. Not quite sure where, but somewhere. And we'll set this base off to the side too, because, well, don't want to have anything happen to that. Because we've got ourselves another bait. Now I could do the bark style here, or 40 mil, this, and that. Now that might be just a wee bit too much. That's a little dangerous looking. I'm not quite sure that his horse would really want to be making that much of a jump. So what I'm going to do is see what I've got here in terms of bark texture. Can hear that just snap right there. Now that's a little more reasonable. Aha. Actually, I like this. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you can see it, but he's sort of on an angle. Oh, wow. That sometimes you get lucky and his 2 feet actually just fit perfectly right there. Now, what can happen, and I'll say this, sometimes the glue or the once you get the pins in there, it can sometimes be really difficult to get them back into that same sweet spot, which is why, especially with a plastic figure, there's that temptation not to put a pin in there. But there's times where I've thought, especially with Lord of the Rings figures, it's just a light little plastic thing, no big deal, and I go to pull it out of my case, which is magnetized, and even though I'm using refrigerator magnets, well, I think you can guess what happened. I have a figure in my hand and a base still in my case. So you don't want a base in a case. You want a base and a figure in your hand, not in the case. And where's my piece go? So this, I really couldn't do much about this without risking, well, really beating the snot out of it. I'm just going to get some of this glue, and we're going to get some of our other glue. There. And we need this piece right about in that spot there. Now, do I want to maybe... Now, this could give it too much of a forested look if I have a broken branch there. Yeah, I'm going to say that's too much of a forest look. Because I'd rather have the sort of that typical sort of Rohan, the flower tufts like I used. But what I will do is use my leaves. Leaves. I think they're probably leaves, not leaves. Good enough. Again, not doing the skull thing. If I had sort of Isengard or shield, that could be fun. All right, so here's where the fun times begin. We're gonna throw a pin into here. Again, just paper clips. And fortunately, he is plastic, so he is not going to need the same kind of anchoring, I suppose, as maybe the metal ones do. And now, here's hoping I can get this in the right spot. Again, it is not a sure thing. Sometimes you just can't get it to be in that same, because now I've got this pin here. Now, wish me luck. I'm just going to try and push this in without moving the entire base. And I think we were successful. Yep. However, just got to leave him be now. Just going to let him go over here, and we will grab the other metal. Stay it in here. We will try and find a somewhat taller, maybe tree bark base like that to have him stand on. Yeah. Okay, if we're going to do that, well, this has to go because we need that to be a little more level. Gotta make sure that this base is not too warped. Kind of felt a little weird. Down with some paste. Some glue. And we also need a pin. Where are you at? This is an accelerated version of all this. So if this was my normal, where it's an all day long process, well, I'd make a lot of the bases first, and then I'd cycle back around again, and then start sticking the figures into the bases, because that would give things actually a chance to dry and solidify. So I'm just going to push this thing down into the base. Once again, we got to let him dry, but now we can maybe go back to some of our first ones here, like Aragorn. Well, more like Strider, I suppose I should say. So here's some handy paste, which is, I'm kind of building it up, and so it's not just flat. I'm actually building it up in some spots. Let's do that on the back here. Just to make it connect as much as possible to the base, instead of just that it's just completely just sticking out of the base and it's not really anchored all that much. A little more. That's better. That's more like it. And then we decide, do we want to do some other smaller rocks? Like that. Sort of kind of completes that base a little bit. And let's do some more rock pieces here, or progressively smaller. Remember, we start with the biggest stuff first, and we get progressively finer. So this is some coarse sand here, and now we've got the fine sand. Looks a lot like snow. Okay, actually, yeah, there's just a little area here. And this is where I'm going to use the paste to try and blend the rocks together a bit. I could be using a finer brush for this, but whatever. Not that big a deal. Alright, so that blends that in a little more. I'm going to fill in some gaps here. Same thing on Theoden here. Oh, look, I've got some of those roots stuck to the brush. I'm tempted to actually put some of those on here. No, I think I'm just going to just go with a little bit of a rock fall here. So the idea is get this brush a little more cleaned up. And now, so I've got a little, ever so slightly, a bit of a rock fall here. Now I have something that I didn't have the last time when I was working on the Rohan guys, and that's the tall foliage and some other, the more the bush type things, the woodland scenic stuff that we used on the eagles. So I will take advantage of that and use that for, see, getting a little bit of a rock fall there. Now, if I can find them, here they are. Got a couple of Army of the Dead here. Well, actually, yeah, I think we have some time. And I need some bases here. Now these I wanted to do more like the sculpey and skulls. Kind of like this guy here. So just give me a little second here, two here, to kind of move some things around. Wanted to clean the cap off for the glue there. Now, these are the new plastic Lord of the Rings. Oh, it's the King, well, maybe not King of the Dead. I don't know, sort of King of the Dead and Heralds. And no, they're not Herald. Let's get this. Some bases now. Sculpey. We've got thicker pieces like this. Thinner pieces like that. We got some small pieces here that we can use. And just kind of, that's why we always kind of save our scraps. And oh, and remember this. We have a little bit of a column here. I'm not sure if I'll get to use that or not. That might be a bit of a stretch, but I also have maybe some shields here. Not going to use the Tombstone, but maybe a broken shield, broken sword. Also have some bones there. Here's a smaller sword. So that's all from the Reaper. From the Reaper tray. Let's see if I've got any. So I have a smaller piece of column there just in case it works. But if you remember, I've got another little ace in the hole to play with, and that's these pieces, like that. That could be very fun. Now the thing is, the way these guys are, they're not going to play too well on this. They need to contact something flat. I know that piece is going to fit. Nah, as much as I would want them to go on a column, that's not going to work. Now these also, remember the army that because they leaned forward so much, we had them tilted. I don't think I have to do that with these guys. They pretty much stay level, so I don't think that's something I've got to do. But this could be nice for the King of the Dead here, and just sort of kind of floating here on a somewhat of a ledge. Now with Lord of the Rings, you got to make sure that they can get into base-to-base contact. So they should still be able to. There, I'm going to just get some glue on this real quick. Here, I'm going to get some of my super glue on there. And I think I can actually squeeze in some kind of skull stuff. I can't get this in there. That's just too much to squeeze into a small area. So we're going to set that aside and say that's for the king. Now, I don't want to be drilling holes into this stuff just yet. And I'm certainly not going to glue them to the base, because as you can see, these guys are hollow on the inside. I did try to prime those initially, and that helped a little bit. Alright, now I've got to find my carving tool here. And we'll just make this look. So we just kind of age that a bit. Now here, that's a little too straight of a line. So we're going to snip that. And I'm going to take away some of these corners just to make sure that that it just kind of fits on the base here. And there you go. And he'll just go on there. Yeah, we can add some skulls too, because I mean, they are from the City of the Dead. Now this one, I definitely want to have him, well, the two banner guys, you sort of want them to be level. Now the other thing that we can do is find the last base, wherever that one went, potentially raise him a little bit on this shorter cork here, and do some skulls over there. I don't think I want to go full blast with sculpey on top of that. So just a quick little glue there. We know that goes with that. Now let's find ourselves some skulls. I'm going to use some of the GW skulls here. Now that's going to mean I have to file some of these down. There's some of the mold lines on them. So there's I want to say there's about 4 main types on here. There's these types that don't have the jaw. There's other ones that do. Then there's some strange ones down. Maybe it is just the 2 types of skulls. I thought there was maybe 4. Well, obviously they have all the different creatures, but we don't really. Yeah, I'm not going to be messing around with the creatures because that's more of a 40K / fantasy type thing. Okay. And pretty much the main mold line that you got to deal with here, if it's really not really a mold line, it's the where you snip these things off, the contact point, and then there is a little bit of a mold line that goes from around that. So again, with the Urkenbrand figure there, if I had some Urukai shields or something like that, I could throw those on there. That could be fun. I'd make some of my own, but it's been so long since I've actually even seen an Urukai miniature. I'm not quite sure what I'd have to do to make those look right. So again, just going after these little mold lines right here. I intended to try and do all this stuff first, but I wasn't sure if I would be doing these or not. I really originally wasn't going to, but I was trying to give you as much variety here to kind of show you more of what actually happens instead of just, well, okay, we take these one type of bases and that's all we work on, just that one type. Well, that's really definitely not the case at all. It's having to work across a whole host of different basing types like this. So again, going to grab a little more of this here. See how it's trying to get it built up towards the rock surface there. Don't have to worry about the back. And now I could use a few dots of super glue or whatever, or regular glue. I'm gonna give up on, oh no, I do have tweezers here. Not quite sure which type I've got. Oh, that should help. Of course, getting them onto the tweezers is usually the challenge. So there's our one. Now I'm going to do another one here that does not have the jaw. That one goes here. Typically, something like just those two there, and now let's do a little touch of rocks. Ever so slightly here. Let's go with a coarser sand, and now the finer sand. Now we've got one last base to worry about here. Like so. Is there any on the, yeah, some on the back too. Now here I might just use some regular glue. I'm just taking a little bit of a stick right there to spread that out a little. And time for some skulls now. Preferably ones that are actually filed. Now you could go wild with these things because remember, the City of the Dead, there were just kind of skulls all over the place. I mean, all over the place. Let's see if we can't sneak one here. Right there. Basically every nook and cranny had a skull in it. But 3 is good enough, remember? And we try and work in a triangle format. This, we would just leave that basically flat. I might take a little bit of oxide paste here and fill that in. Touch of the coarser and then fine sand just to fill that in. And poof, our heralds go on there, and the king or whatever is going to go onto here. I don't want to mess with this too much, but see how he's kind of going right over that edge like that? That was the goal. Will he sit there? Nope, he's not going to sit there. But anyways, I know we didn't do the swords or whatever, but maybe we do that with the owl bear or something like that. Actually, I think I'm going to save the diorama type things for another episode, if you do not mind, because we are already well over. We're going to be pushing 90 minutes because, let's not forget, this guy here, we got to finish him off. And I think we've given this about 45 minutes or so to sit there, so that's solid enough for us to mess around with. So we'll be right back with this guy next. I think I've got a few things we can play with in this last segment. I'll sort of surprise you with the next one. You can sort of see it towards the top of the screen, but what I wanted to do is play with some of these Reaper things like the sword, shields, maybe one of these we'll put on there. Now, this is some of the other stuff I was referring to. They make little treasure chests like this. I think there's 2 or 3 different kinds. There's spell effects, familiars, there's all kinds of really fun stuff. And as I start to do more diorama style things, we'll play with that. But I think this is a good spot for this right here. But we're not going to set that in there just yet because we got all of this stuff. I don't want to completely blow away the texture on this because it does sort of match the rest of the base, but we have some gaps to fill, and that's what we're going to do here. That's what we're going to do here. Just take some of this. Again, you'll have to pardon my hand there. This does a couple of things. It stabilizes this. Remember how this was just, I can actually hold this now, and this is, again, after just 40 some odd minutes, I can actually hold this with by the figure, and it's not even pinned here. So that tells you that between the super glue, the regular glue, the paste here, you can get some decent hold. And all I'm trying to do is make sure that that seam is just covered as much as possible. Now, I've decided maybe against some of the branches, it doesn't, because I got the vellum foliage that I could use. To me, if I want this to be more of a jungle type thing, why not use that? So I think that's what I'll do, is I'll stick more with the jungle foliage here and maybe less with the branches. Maybe just go with what we're doing here. So if we want that sword to go in here, I'm just going to give it a bit of glue. You can see we've filed this down, and it just sort of naturally fits right there. I'll give that a few seconds before I start turning this, upside down or whatever. But the idea is to maybe have this shield go over here. Before that happens, I am going to use just some regular old glue here. One of the things I keep forgetting to grab is kind of one of my junky small brushes. I'm going to see if I've got one over here. I think I just might. Yep. So sometimes when you have, like, this is a Cotman here, you can see how beat up that is. Well, instead of throwing it away, I'm going to use it for things like this, where I say I want me some glue in here. And I'm going to grab some of these green stuff world skulls here and pop some of these in place. Because why not? Again, sometimes, so I've got some paste on them. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because there would be some dirt piled over these. I mean, they wouldn't just kind of sit there and nothing touches them if they're just going to be sitting there decaying all that time. So And I think I will try and throw one over here. This one's... Now, what I have to say is that the green stuff world, as far as just the human-esque skulls go, there's way more variety. There's some are leaning on their sides. They're, I guess, more damaged, maybe, than, say, the GW ones all tend to be very similar. Now, do I go with the sliced up one or do I go with the wooden texture? I'm going to go with the sliced up version here. So I'm going to get me some glue on the other side of this and hopefully get this glued in place without gluing me to the base. At least that's the plan. So we have all kinds of fun things. We got a weapon, a sword, some skulls. Oh, what the heck? Maybe another skull is going to find its way in here. Maybe right there. We have some. Yeah, there are many, many more types of a variety of the skull type on the green stuff world sprues. Well, yeah, like this one, see, it's more laying on its side. Where'd that one go? Is this the one? Yeah, we'll go with this one here. I am gonna file away a little bit of texture there. And my goal is to not drop it on the ground. Somehow get this placed eventually. There's really not many good places to grab it. There we are. Okay, now I've done leaves in other places. I need to do that again. Give me some ground cover. And it does multiple things. It masks even more. There is no way. Once this is all... Well, I'd basically have to prime this again. The reason I prime the figures is because that shining... You can see how the metal's shining here. Imagine if this whole figure was metal. That would just be driving the camera nuts and you wouldn't be able to see anything. So I could always just brush on primer the base here, but I'll just hit it with primer the regular way. Now again, I can make this water down here, but I think I might go a little wild with some of the vellum foliage. Why not? That's pretty nice. But again, he's going to go off to the side so nothing happens to him. This is the little surprise. Let's get this out here. Now I'm going to see how much it's going to let me zoom in. It may not. It will let me zoom in a little more. I'm going to get some of this out of the way. Get that a little more centered. What we have here is, this is the dark sword, kind of that's like a maiden emerging from water. Now it comes with a whole metal thing with where she's sort of moving the water around and everything, but I wanted to try the lily pads. Speaking of vellum, it's from Wicked Elf. And I also have these, remember I told you about the familiars, or they're just like critters here. So I got some frogs. These are some from Reaper miniatures. And what I'm trying to do is something like this. A little something like this. Will that work? We shall see. I think she needs to go a little bit further back, and then we have her. I would have liked to have her just walking through the water, but the skull, with the little froggies there, they're just kind of... There's no way I was cutting them off of that stuff, so I had to modify the plans a little bit. I sort of just stumbled across this maiden walking across the water, walking through the water figure. I was looking for something else. So there's our little froggies. And like I said, I got to give the glue a little chance to to set here. But I'm going to take, where's my little brush here? Much smaller brush here. And do something like this. So it's not quite so noticeable. Because and see, I've got a little lip here. That's why I selected this one, because I can fill it up with some water effects. Maybe we just use, oh, what is that? The heavy gloss gel, because that could have some ripples in it. Although I'm not sure if I want to do that, because we also want to have those lily pads. Now, I also was thinking about doing sort of that rainy, where the water is kind of putting little drops in it. That may or may not happen with this. I can't promise that right now. But I think you can see where this is going here. All I want to do is have these. Ideally, I could have chopped these frogs off of here and then put them on the vellum lily pads, but that wasn't quite possible. So again, just trying to build this out, a little bit of land here, or maybe just a little bit of mud for the froggies to stand on. Take some of that away. Build up that so it looks less like just a little chunk of tree bark and almost a little more like what the frogs are on. I think this is, we could even combine this with a little bit of vellum butterflies maybe. Yeah, having some fun with this. All right. Where did she go? Now, I'm definitely not going to put skulls on this. That's a little bit too much there. And we're going to try and get her positioned nicely on this. So as you know, make sure we got some decent focus on this for you. All in this area. That's where that wicked elf foliage is going to go. And actually, I think this will be the next Dark Sword tutorial here. Because the Draconis guy, that's going to be a very long episode. But I really wanted to try and play with this here. So, yeah. All I'm trying to do is get a little bit of texture on the rest of this, because just a flat texture, that's not good. Also building up the edge there a little bit. So hopefully you can see what's happening here. Yeah. Now you could just paint the base here too. I've done that in the past, where I sort of painted what looks like leaves underwater or some kind of seaweed, whatever. But we got the paste going right now. Why not give it a little bit of natural texture? And I've got those cattails. Remember that is foliage. So there's so many foliage options that I have. I kind of want to leave those open here instead of, and that's what I used to kind of do in the past, was lots of the rocks and the texture of like what we're doing now, because I didn't have as many options like I do with foliage. All right, so that takes care of that. Now there is, this is Camille the Easterling here. I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. I realize that. But I did want to find some way to use this. Is there some way we could have him standing on just kind of a battleground like that? Now that means I'm going to have to go dig through and find a appropriate base, which I think I can. Here we go. Now, him being in combat is a bad thing. That is not something that you want to see happen. Or do I build him up on some kind of rocky, craggy thing like this and put the skulls elsewhere? That looks a little weird. I'm going to get a fresh chunk of cork. And we're going to see what we can do. Alright, so that fits on that base. There's plenty of room for him to go. But because of this little cutout in the bottom here, place for skulls, and I know my hand is sort of casting a shadow on that. First things first, though. So yeah, I kept trying to find a ideal figure for that skull texture, but unfortunately, it's just there's no. I mean, you can see there's this flat thing right here. It just wouldn't work any other way. So yeah, sorry about that. I thought I could make it work, but we have a couple extra skulls, so there's that too. And here I can just combine one of the GW skulls maybe with some of the Green Stuff World skulls, because he's one of the 9. Here we are. I will be doing I don't know how much of a conversion project that's going to be, but I have to make, I want him to be on a Fell Beast. So maybe that'll be one conversion thing. I've got a whole bunch of Easterling heroes to manufacture. So that's going to be, I haven't done any kind of sculpting or converting yet. So that is my goal, is to have the Easterling sort of serve that function. So here with again, I could have taken some kind of tape and covered that up, but there's no weight here. There's no pressure here. Not like the Harad bases where we're putting the sand on there and sculpting waves. It's not going to sink down in there any more than it already has. And now we'll go in here with our last couple of skulls. I'm just going to use some regular glue in here. So yeah, I thought I could make that texture sheet work there, but you don't always get to choose. If the didn't have the cape and the feet weren't sort of together and part of that whole section of the sculpt, might have been able to get away with it. All right, so you are going to go here like that. Got a couple of Green Stuff World skulls, and I'm going to dispense with the tweezers so that I can just deal with these on my own. There we go. And now I'm just going to do my little bit with that's that coarse sand, then the fine sand. Also helps to kind of anchor those skulls in place. Now, I still have some of my paper clip left. Here's Kamul. Pin. Give that a snip. And again, this is normally something where I would just sort of wait to press this in place. I'm going to get a little more glue on this here. And it wants to resist a little bit. Yeah, see, like right there, that's where if I want him to stand in there, I have to actually drill a hole. But I've got glue there, and I have no interest in getting glue in my drill bit. That is no bueno. Don't want to be doing that. Still, that's not too shabby. Right, it gets the point across. He's a dead guy with more dead guys around him. All right, so thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate that. But I hope that some of these little review here real quick. Some of these are easy enough ways to deal with these broccoli bases here. Using the materials we already have, no new materials, the same stuff. So many different genres, and here again, the story that tells you got the runes on the base, you got that book there, some kind of spell book type thing. And that's again with no dry leaves, no foliage even, which is going to help magnify the story. We've got our things we want to do here with the vellum plants from Wicked Elf. So these should be really fun. Sorry we didn't get to the, what was that, those from Warlord there, the slate pieces, but when I do the diorama bases that are bigger, that's pretty much the place we want to go with that. So thanks again, everybody. I will catch you on the next basing episode. Like I said, I think I want to go with the more of the diorama style basing on the next one. And then we've got obviously plenty of Dark Sword and Reaper figures to paint for that pledge level. And for all the folks that pledge to that level, it's much appreciated. It helps to keep this stuff going so I can try out these new things. And we even have a couple of Reaper figures for you here. So I try to keep painting some of those. There we go. So again, I will catch you on the next episode, next workbench episode. If I drop a like on the video, that's good too. Until then, I will catch you next time.